Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Pop Culture Therapy. It's been since December, but I'm at Nebula.
And I'm Cruellica Kain. Hopefully you haven't forgotten about us.
And life got crazy. I went on a strike.
That's like the understatement of the year. I went on strike. I hurt my knee. I was home.
For basically 3.5 weeks.
And then I started 2022 with COVID, which was awesome. Avoided it for 2 years. And then finally get it.
Yeah, so this is the reason why we're just now getting back on track on this.
Oh my god, I know. Well, hopefully you'll watch. Hopefully you'll enjoy it.
And if you've been around the Twitterverse over the last 48 hours, you have seen Gatekeeping's gotten bad. Again.
Yes, so we wanted to do an episode on Gatekeeping 2.0.
There's basically 3 big things that we'll be hearing about this. First one we'll go on. Kaiju was watching the G.I. Joe figure reveal stream on Hasbro. And then the comments start rolling on Twitter. Oh, lordy.
And even on that stream itself, there's a woman in charge of the G.I. Joe figure line, which I don't see as a bad thing. I'm not going to go on to this feminist agenda of, oh my god, we always have to have equality, but it's nice to see for a toy line that is generally targeted towards men, yes, having a female lead.
And she's a genuine fan. I looked at a few of the clips from the stream last night, and she's a genuine fan. She knows what she's talking about.
And I think the frustration is, for all of us who grew up on G.I. Joe, primarily those who are from the 80s, who had the G.I. Joe cartoon and then had G.I. Joe Extreme, equality was the name of the game.
Yeah.
You have characters of different races, different creeds, you had male and female characters.
And it was one of the first shows in the 80s to have extremely strong, fleshed out female characters.
Well, you have Scarlet, you have
the Baroness.
I was going to say, you have and you have Lady J. So you have 3 very strong female characters on the side of the Joes.
And the side of Cobra.
And they all held apart. They weren't damsels in distress, which
there was never really a damsel in distress character in the show. It was an early pioneer of equality for children's cartoons.
Well, and you also had a major player with Gung Ho.
Yeah.
Being an African American character. So I understand to a certain degree, guys could be like, well, this is a men's thing. This is a boys' thing. Girls can't be a part of it. I can guarantee you, in the 80s and 90s, I had G.I. Joe figures. I had He-Man figures. I had more boy-related figures than did girls. The only girls figures I had were really like Barbie dolls, but I even destroyed them because I was a terrible child who made my mother waste money for toys that I would adjust. But it's still that fact of you can't pick and choose. And I'm not looking at it at a modern era, but the gatekeeping that was done in regards to her is specifically saying, what does she know about G.I. Joe? She's a woman. What does she know about a boy's toy line? She's a woman. Okay, if we're going to go to that route, what does Hasbro know about a girl's toy line, such as My Little Pony? Or the Bratz dolls?
Yeah, Hasbro.
Or no, Mattelda owns Bratz, but...
Yeah. But still, Hasbro, with its line, it's been producing the Power Rangers line, and even when it had its superhero lines, it put the person that they knew was going to be best in charge, and they still do this, they put the person best in charge that has the most knowledge to run these toy lines.
And it's in the fact that we're having someone who is having to be called out because she's a woman as the only reason she can't be in charge of it, when the quality of the figures coming out have been impressive. And I live with a figure collector. I'm not a figure collector. So to me, quality is something that I experience vicariously through Kaiju, because he's the one who will explain it to me. But even I could see that the figures were high quality and that they're creatively done. And
it's like me, who's just buys Good Smile stuff. I pay for my figures. I know what I'm paying for.
well, you expect quality,
Yeah.
and with the cost of any figures now, because even the G.I. Joes and other toy figures that are primarily sold in America, they're $25-$30 now at minimum.
Yeah, and then somebody like me who does import lines, I'm paying $70 or higher.
And I think that's my biggest problem with the American toy market currently at this time, and how it looks at the gatekeeping. Because collectors, and this is collectors, this is not just regular kids off the streets caring.
They're just happy to have a figure of their favorite character.
Well, exactly. Or get new toy figures that they didn't even know.
Yeah.
Because G.I. Joe has been out of the zeitgeist for pop culture
For close to, I want to say, 10 years, not counting the live action films.
Well, exactly. So unless you really see like minor things, you don't know much about the series or what it meant or anything like that.
It's just the figure collectors in the comic book line are just where it's really stayed for the last 10 years.
And I will say that this is a perfect example of a glass ceiling situation, which is another form of gatekeeping. For anyone who doesn't know what I mean by glass ceiling, generally, there's always been this perspective that women cannot hit beyond, or cannot go beyond a certain level in their career because of how people perceive a certain role. A good example would be the President of the United States. Everybody was pretty much unilaterally not going to vote for Hillary Clinton. And the Republicans had their own agenda. But the consensus across the board was, how can a woman lead the country? Even though it's been proven time and time again in other nations, women have led. Even Margaret Thatcher from UK.
1980s. Even if she does get the shit for the stuff she did with Reagan in that era.
Exactly, but she ran an entire kingdom. So there is that glass ceiling perspective of saying a woman cannot do something.
And it used to be the same way with CEOs of corporations, where now almost 40% of the corporations in America have women at or are the CEOs of their companies.
Or in high positions of power. So the glass ceiling has always been something that women primarily, yes, there's other gender nominations, there's other racial nominations that have also had that ceiling, but has generally been a female-driven situation. And so when I heard about this, I saw it as twofold. Traditional gatekeeping, assuming that somebody cannot be a part of that group because the larger consensus doesn't believe they have the credentials.
Yep.
And then you have the glass ceiling aspect of having a woman in charge of a program or a figure line that people believe should only be managed by men. And their perspective could have been, I didn't see all the comments, but from how I took it, is that, oh, she should be in charge of a girly line like Barbie because that is made for girls.
Yeah. Then, as a lot of people know, Elden Ring came out today. Mm-hmm. And it's been talked about as the new Souls game. I gotta give the Souls community some flack again. Every time a new game in the genre comes out, you have the gatekeepers come out trying to keep the newer players in, or they just like to troll the new players that don't know the get good on this game because they're complaining about the difficulty in gatekeeping the people who want to enjoy these games, but trying to keep them out because they don't understand, there's no difficulty setting. These games are fucking hard.
Well, and I think the gatekeeping, and this is also a gatekeeping situation with From Software as well.
Yeah.
So the challenge when you have a game, because we actually watched a trailer and a playthrough of Elden Ring. And at first I was like, oh, that looks so cool. And then when even kaiju, who can play hard games.
And I play these on PC and I've, like, yeah, these are fucking hard games.
Well, and so I have two people, you and kaiju, that will go out of their way to play challenging games.
Yeah.
And you play them, but you take forever to play them.
Because they are freaking hard, but I take my time because they're so lore dense, and I know I'm going to be facing a boss 20, 30, 50 times before I'm going to tackle one down, where Kaiju doesn't have that patience.
No, but sometimes you don't either. You have thrown controllers out windows. So, don't...
This is why I switched to playing these games on PC, because I'm not going to destroy a PC.
That is very true. But this is a challenge that I have with certain video game companies. Fans expect certain demands, yes. Because there have been games I play, let's say, I'm going to use Yakuza as an example. You have difficult settings. So, and you have this with Persona games as well.
Oh, yeah.
And you know yourself to know what difficult setting you're willing to take.
How much of pain you want to go through on a playthrough.
And if it's a game that I'm unfamiliar with, or a genre I have not played before, I typically start on a lower difficult setting to at least ease myself in, and then I'll either restart the game or finish it and do Name Game Plus on that higher difficulty. But From Software, they purposely, and
they've been doing this since the PlayStation era with Armored Core. They have had this difficulty since way back then.
Well, they have. And their gatekeeping is they make games for people who like to be punished.
I have said I'm a masochist, and I admit it.
And while that's fair, I do feel that's a level of gatekeeping from a business perspective, because you're not going to get too many new fans willing to try a game when they know... Well, think about it for Capcom, using them as an example. You have Street Fighter and you have Resident Evil. Two very well-known IPs that have lasted the test of time, more than 30 years each. And
Street Fighter's going to be turning 35 this year.
Exactly. So they know how to capture their audience, but they know how to do it in a way that...
And they welcome new players in. It's just the fighting game community that doesn't.
Well, yes, but the fighting game community is a whole different...
That's a whole topic we can spend a whole video on itself.
Exactly. Fighting games are insane, the community is. But they make games, especially with their fighting games, that anyone can pick up a controller and enjoy the experience. And when you have a company like From Software, and you can even say Rockstar is the same way with their own stuff, they are very limited on what new people they can bring to the community, because if you know the games are hard, because everybody compares it to Dark Souls or Demon Souls, who's going to buy it?
Only the hardcore fans. And then when somebody's trying to get broken in, the hardcore fans go, no, buddy, go stick to your little easy play games.
Oh, absolutely. And
you're already seeing that on Twitter already from the newbies by Elden Ring, because of its association with George R.R. Martin, not knowing anything about From Software, and they're asking for help. And in come all the From Software veterans just tearing them down.
Well, and I think that's unfair at the same time, because video games are an element of escapism. They're, especially for games like this, that your online community is not the same as the fighting game online community. Yes, you can have PvP and different things like that, but this is a more story-based game. So it is more of a solo adventure. And for veterans to just like, oh, you're not meant for this, this is too hard for you. Go play your silly games. And even when you give credentials of what games you play that are challenging in and of itself, apparently they don't hit that requirement of what is needed.
They're basically, oh, you don't play Shin Megami, which is like the only other genre they'll accept.
Yeah, and Shin Megami is hard.
Yeah.
I play Shin Megami, so...
Normal setting on those games is what most companies have for their hard difficulty.
For Shin Megami?
Yeah.
I play normal. But it's still that hard part of gatekeeping that is twofold. And I think and obviously the company has their own right to gatekeep how they want to. They have a niche.
They have made their niche extremely profitable for them.
Well, exactly. So are you going to fault somebody for making a niche that has made them wealthy? No. But if they're going to make a new IP, they need to be conscientious about not stonewalling individuals that want to get involved in that new IP.
Yeah, Bloodborne didn't do it, but Elden Ring, you're seeing it.
Mm-hmm. And that's my challenge with From Software. The fans, however, they're just making it a challenge because they're not allowing people to understand the difficulties or helping them with it.
They're doing the old fallback, get good. The old meme, get good.
And and obviously in an instant gratification culture that we live in,
it's not gonna fly for people who just want a quick escapism, not I'm going to be a masochist myself trying to beat this one boss for the next 3 hours.
Exactly. And that's not to say that all games are instant gratification, because even my Otome games that I play on the Switch, they take 30, 40 hours. So you're not getting through the story that quickly. But yeah, gatekeeping has gotten bad.
And the final gatekeeping, which is also going to talk about the difference between Eastern views on idol culture and American views on idol culture. Hololive and Clover Corp fired Uehara Ruchia for violating NDA on her contract, and I went into it, I'm like, okay, I can completely understand it, but...
Okay, for explanation of what happened.
So what happened was, she was on a stream, GTA, with another one of her collabs, Miko. Her Discord DM opened up. Popstar Momo-kun ended up being in the DM. Turns out they were dating. Under the NDA, from what's come out, being a member of Hololive, your private relationships, if you're dating, cannot become public knowledge. So they let her, because of the mental health from the outcry of angry Japanese and Korean fans about this, saying it ruined the girlfriend experience they were having. American fans were very supportive of her.
And so this is a great example of culture in and of itself, and how they can be either ethnocentric in their philosophies or, as you said, very gatekeeping.
And it really goes to show the very gatekeeping side of idol culture, which is already a dumpster fire in Japan.
So, in idol culture, I think you brought up a good point. You have to look at it from a Japanese and Korean standpoint. So, let's look at BTS as an example, because they're prominent in both the US, Korea. Actually, they're prominent all over.
They're worldwide famous now.
So, in Korea, they, just similar to what you said, have to keep their relationships private if they have them.
And they sign NDAs that they will not expose if they are dating anybody.
Well, and supposedly, through rumors, one of the members is actually married. So, and this is rumors, so nobody knows for sure.
Because there's NDAs, and obviously he's not going to break an NDA that's making him money.
And also, the other aspect of this is that they also can't do certain things to their own bodies. So one of the members of BTS, and please forgive me if you're a huge fan, I enjoy their music, I do not know all their names. God help me, I've tried, but I don't. One of the members has tattoos. And when he is on stage, there are times where he have to have like band-aids and things and long sleeve shirts covering up his body in Korea, because people freak out because in Eastern countries, tattoos are looked down upon.
In Japan, because they're associated with Yakuza, and in Korea, because they're associated with the lower class.
And it amazes me because, like, in America,
America up until about 2002 looked down on them.
No, 2010. It's been about 12 years since the professional side of the culture has finally let go.
And it took a few prominent celebrities to make it big, and it took a couple very heavily tattooed CEOs to break the stigma.
Yes, because in America, yes, around 2002, the cultural litness of, like, the personal, like, people just having tattoos was fine. But in the business culture, it took until about 2010 because most people look down, in the United States, most people look down upon you having tattoos working in a professional environment.
It really took Kat Von D, if you think about it.
Mm-hmm. So obviously Americans are just as hypocritical as every other culture on their own professional gatekeeping, and that is an entire different episode if you ever want to have the pop culture narrative of professional gatekeeping. But in Japan specifically, you have to look a certain way, act a certain way, be a certain way.
And when you're in the professional entertainment industry, whether you're a virtual idol or a real idol, you have to follow what you sign in your contract. And if you breach any small piece of that contract on your NDA, they can fire you no matter what.
Well, look at Philip from Double.
Yeah, there's another example of it.
He basically did one thing. Or let's look at Tusk from Kyoger. No, Zooger, sorry.
Zooger.
He got into an accident on a bicycle, made some mistakes, his career is destroyed. Or you have Commoner Gills from Agito. He got into a fight with his girlfriend. Not like a physical fight, but just a fight. It was public, like we do in America all the time.
But because
and his career destroyed.
Any actor there that's been just even had an accusation of drug use, their career dead, like that.
And also, if you begin getting too old in these Asian countries, and obviously I'm stereotyping a very small markets. But because of that girlfriend perspective or that fascination with visualizing this person as a love interest, if they start to look older, they're gone. Think of like Baby Metal.
Yep.
They have rotated their crew, just like Akeba
48.
Yeah, Akeba 48. They've rotated their members continuously.
And yet some of the members have stayed on, but they've ended up going into acting careers.
Mm-hmm. And even the acting arena for idols and it's not just Korea and Japan, it's also Korea, Japan, Taiwan, China.
Vietnam's the opposite of that.
Well, same as Indonesia. Yeah. They're very different.
Vietnam, Singapore, and Indonesia are complete opposite from... And you've really seen the pop idol industry influence itself really primarily Japan, Korea, and somewhat China.
So the reason why there's that element of gatekeeping is because you as an outsider. So using BTS as an example again, they're coming close to the age, I think one of the members is already at that age, where they have to serve their mandatory 2-year military service. And Korea does not just let that go if you stay a Korean citizen.
No, they don't care if you're a celebrity or not. You still have to serve that.
So a lot of fans have been petitioning to have BTS as a prominent worldwide example not have to do it.
And it's not the Korean fans, it's the worldwide fans that don't understand it.
And that's the other element of gatekeeping that I wanted to focus on, looking at the Western nations, and I'm going to include Europe and America in this, and the Americas in this, because Western fans, especially if you look at the United States as a great example, there's no such thing as privacy for our celebrities. Everything is public. We know who everybody dates. We know who everybody gets married to. We know that when they have children.
Yeah, they do the same thing in many of the European countries, too.
And so we know everything about their lives, because in a very sad and tragic way of looking at it, the moment you become part of the celebrity spotlight,
you have no privacy.
Your life is now not yours alone. You represent millions.
And TMZ, as scummy as they are, has proven this.
And a great example of how our lack of gatekeeping when it comes to the privacy and not caring about our celebrities is, look at when Lindsay Lohan turned 18.
Yep. Or when Britney Spears went off the deep end.
Exactly. So when Lindsay Lohan turned 18, oh God, I can't remember how many years ago this was.
She's now 35.
I was going to say, she's in her mid-30s now. But when she turned 18, every male and female that had any interest in her exploded, because she was not a child anymore. She was of legal age, and everybody could objectify her.
And you're seeing the same thing happen with Millie Bobby Brown now.
And then you have, like you said, with Britney Spears, when her mental health issues, which are tragic beyond belief, became public eye, everybody was in the story. We're having it currently with Kanye West versus Kim Kardashian and Pete Davidson.
And you can thank TMZ for this BS.
Along with Kanye West's Instagram account. But
let's not even get into Kanye.
I don't want to. But if you look at it from a different perspective, this is why Western fans were so angry, or not really angry, but supportive. But angry for her firing, but supportive of her life.
Yeah, they were so supportive of the fact she had a boyfriend as a virtual idol. They were going and supporting her. But Cover's a Japanese company, and they run their Japanese idols separate from their Indonesian and American idols. The NDAs that they have, they can't talk about certain things in that, and they're running it based on the cultures of where the countries are located.
And this could also be another episode where we can talk about how pop culture has affected exploitation of stars throughout the world. But that's a very heavy topic, not for this particular episode.
But yeah, it's just, you're seeing gatekeeping from different side perspectives, of one side going and cheering her on, and the other side with Russia's fans going, no, she has a boyfriend, we don't want anything to do with her. And the whole climax of this, and her violating her NDA, her YouTube channel, which has 1.67 million subscribers and 2.5 years of content, will be completely deleted March 3rd.
Mm-hmm. Because it's owned by
Cover Corp.
And it's disappointing. And the reason why we wanted to focus on this type of gatekeeping is because this is very different than a fandom gatekeeping. Yes, we mildly talked about it with the aspect of From Software with their Dark Souls fans. But it shows that gatekeeping is everything. It's not just, if you're a fan of this genre but not a fan of this genre, we're going to gatekeep you and keep you out of it. It's like saying, it's all so relative to the fact that people are protective of what they like. And if you do not agree with what they like in this hive mindset...
And what's so amazing, in a 5-day span, you've had 3 events in a 5-day span, all culminate at once, showing 3 separate examples.
And it's disappointing because... But at the same time, it's not unexpected. No. I think that's the terrible truth about it, is you expect it, but you're sad about it at the same time.
Yeah, and you go on Twitter, you go on Reddit, which I try to avoid Reddit except for a few... specific ones. Am I the Asshole and Public Freakouts are really the only two I enjoy to visit, because everything else on Reddit's gatekeeped, and then Twitter, well, you can't have a social media presence without being on Twitter, unfortunately.
Well, exactly. And actually, I do have one last story I wanted to talk about gatekeeping real quick. And this is actually gatekeeping from the LGBTQ side against a cis heteronormative person. So the most current season of RuPaul's Drag Race had, they've since been eliminated. It's an ongoing show. But the character's name is Maddie Morphosis. Maddie Morphosis in real life is a heterosexual drag queen.
A rarity, but they do exist.
I've actually met a few in my life. I say a few, but it's less than a handful. But they do exist. Men dressing up in drag has been in existence for...
pre-Shakespearean era.
I was going to say, it's been a very long time, and more often than not, many of them were, in today's terms, cis, male, and heterosexual. But many of the fans of Drag Race, and not all of them are LGBTQ, but they're allies, or they represent themselves as allies because they're a fan of the show. And they got up in arms saying a straight person is not allowed on RuPaul's Drag Race.
Which shows they don't know the history of drag. And
it disappointed me because I was excited, not just because obviously I'm a hetero-leaning bisexual because of my long-term relationship, but it was fascinating because it was nice to see representation of something that you don't normally see.
Which is exciting, but then, as you said, the gatekeepers come out.
The gatekeepers come out, and thankfully, this particular character, Maddie, I'll go with she because in drag she goes by that, but she was very, very vocal about just because I'm heterosexual does not mean that I take away from anyone that identifies otherwise. Plus, this shows that I believe that we need to be vocal allies, and if this is something I can do to be a vocal ally, are you really going to not allow me to have this platform? And so this gatekeeping happened a few months ago, but it's still ongoing, and it goes along the lines of these are public figures that are being gatekeeped more so than just your random fans.
Yeah.
But with that said, we are going to finish this episode because it was heavier than anything. And
it's one of the heaviest episodes we've done. God, I'd
a
say
while.
about 6 months.
And we'll probably have more heavy episodes because we're in that type of mind frame, apparently. But we're going to go with a lighter episode next week. We're going to talk about isekais.
Are there too many? I don't think so.
And we'll get into that topic. But see you later. Bye.